You get to decide who you want to be a hero to. And we love to work with veterans. They're the best clients. As far as I'm concerned, if there's anybody that I am willing to do anything for, it's for those people who raise their hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. For me, they made the sacrifice, and anytime I can give back, I want to do that.
Welcome to the Tip the Scales podcast, where we discuss running and growing your law firm. I'm your host, Maria Monroy, president and co-founder of LawRank. Today, I am joined by John Barry. He called his intake team a sales team. I was very excited about that. And we talked about how what he learned from being in the military can be applied to running a law firm that has 3 different practice areas: veterans disability, criminal defense, and personal injury. I hope that you guys enjoy this episode. John Barry. That was crazy. So just to give the audience some context, we've met once or twice before.
Yes.
And we've tried recording before, but for whatever reason, we've never coordinated.
Schedules don't always work.
I know. And we're walking through the hallway in opposite directions, and we say hi. And I just made a comment like, we got to record the podcast sometime. And you're like, yeah, sure. Let me know. I'll come on. And I was like, okay, we'll coordinate unless you want to do it right now. And you're like, I'll do it right now. And here we are.
Fortune favors the bold.
Yeah.
Make a
awesome.
decision, go with it.
So what do you want to talk about? We haven't prepped.
We haven't prepped. No, whatever you want to talk about. We can talk about podcasts.
Do you have a podcast?
I do. It's called the Veteran Led Podcast.
I think I've seen that before. It's relatively new, a year old, maybe less.
Yes, less than 100 episodes.
Okay.
So we'll hit 100 episodes this year, coinciding with the Veteran Led book launch. So really excited about that.
Oh, that's really quick though.
Yeah. So
when did you start it?
So I started the book 3 years ago.
Okay.
And I started working with ghost writers, and I'm a pretty good writer. I went to the College of William and Mary. I was an English major.
Okay.
And then I also got the Cali Award, or the highest A in advanced legal writing in law school.
Okay.
So I'm a decent writer. I just don't have a lot of time to do it. So I really wanted to work with a coach. And also, as we know, legal writing is different than writing an entertaining book. And, legal writing is, I think there's some similarities where you want to be clear and concise. I think a lot of lawyers get that wrong. Some of them sound like Chat GPT, right? They like to throw in big words. It's all superfluous, but at the end of the day, it becomes cute and clever instead of clear and concise. And I absolutely hate that type of writing.
So wait, how long have you had the podcast?
So a year in October.
And you're almost at 100 episodes?
Yeah. So about the first 50, I just started taking chapters from the book and hitting the main points. So that's how it started. It was like, we're not going to get this book launched this year. So what can we do? And I said, well, we'll just start a podcast.
That's amazing. And who's your target audience?
Veterans, specifically veterans who want that bigger, better future after service.
Okay.
So we talked to a lot of heroes who had amazing military careers, but then what happens is some of them just live in their museum. And others go on to build extraordinary things like, Fred Smith built FedEx. Nike was started by 2 veterans. Everybody knows about Phil Knight. He was an Army reservist, but Bill Bowerman was a World War II hero. I believe he was a major, and I think he had, 1 or 2 Bronze Stars, maybe a Silver Star. So, these are some phenomenal leaders coming out into the business world. And a lot of people don't know that some of the best companies were started by veterans.
Wait, but hold on, back up. Why? How did you have this idea? I'm like,
sure.
I didn't know any of this, so.
Yeah, so we have a national veterans disability practice.
Okay.
And we started helping veterans. And what I found was we would help them get their VA disability benefits. And it was like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? They would start off and they wouldn't be able to, just the basic things in life they couldn't afford. And some of it was because of PTSD and other things. Some of it, they had physical injuries. Once they began to get their disability payment, they kind of got their life back under control and they started getting treatment from the VA. They're like, okay, I'm back. Now what can I do? I don't have a mission and I don't have a team. But the veterans that I met that went out, that built their own missions and built their own teams, were wildly successful. And so I started interacting with them, and I had this great opportunity to participate in something called CEO Circle. It's sponsored by JP Morgan Chase and the D'Anello Institute at Syracuse University. And it's a program we go to where we have a cohort and we meet with other veteran CEOs, and we work together in masterminds and basically help each other with our businesses. But like I've gone to legal conferences for a long time, right? But I've never really found my tribe. And so like the veterans are my tribe. Like they get me the same sense of humor and the same sense of camaraderie and just the really deep, meaningful relationships where we all just want to see each other succeed. There's no jealousy. We don't hold back. It's like, how can I help you?
But you also have a PI practice, right? So you have a veteran disability practice. You have a PI, anything else?
And criminal defense.
That's what I thought. Okay. And criminal defense. Now, I think it makes sense to start a podcast for, say, veterans, right?
Yes.
Because it's very specific, right? But in the PI world, I hear a lot of lawyers that are like, oh, I want to start a podcast. But I feel like, well, you're either targeting other lawyers that are going to refer you cases, or it would be more of like almost like a library for your clients for their clients to be able to listen to, like frequently asked questions or something very generic, right? So I don't even know what my point is.
I looked at that. Okay, now fair enough.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes,
like,
it's boring. Nobody wants to listen to your legal podcast about personal injury. The closest we can get in legal podcasts is true crime. And so
those are fun.
Those are fun. And we've got a lot of stories. And the way we got into personal injury was we had a large veterans disability practice and we were criminal defense lawyers who tried cases. Now, my father, the founder, back in his day, if you were a trial lawyer, you would try everything from a contract case to a personal injury case to a murder case. Trial lawyers tried cases. And so he'd get hired by some pretty big firms to come in and try cases for them. That has changed over time. And we were fortunate in that the veterans disability practice is very much like pre-lit in PI, where essentially you are developing the claim for the veteran. You're gathering evidence, you're looking at medical records, and you're putting together medical chronologies. Same stuff we do in pre-litigation. And then we have a bunch of great criminal trial lawyers. So it's like, wait a minute, we have both skills. And if you look at a lot of PI practices, many of them are bifurcated into this is our pre-lit department and this is our trial department. And so it's like, well, wait a minute, we have both. So because we had developed systems and we had experts who could review medical records and we developed great systems for this with over 10,000 veterans nationwide, we figured out that we could build this into personal injury as well. And it was a great opportunity for us to recruit more people and expand our offerings to our clients. Now that being said,
do you have lawyers that work on veteran disability cases and also work on PI cases?
No, I learned that lesson the hard way.
Okay.
We had people that would come to the office and say, hey, we really want to work in this area to try to get their foot in the door and work somewhere else. And you can't serve two masters. You can only be an expert at one thing. And so I want people who want to be the best at what they do.
So how do you manage 3 different practice areas? Like is it like 3 different firms? Is it not? Is there some overlap? Sounds complicated. How did you figure that out?
Leadership.
Okay.
So my chief operating officer is a 2-star general, former fighter pilot.
Okay.
And if you've ever read the book Scrum by Jeff Sutherland, also a fighter pilot,
I haven't.
it talks about the OODA loop and project management, decision making, and things like that. And so we've gotten really good at that. And so the way my team is structured is I have commanders or section leaders that run each of the 3 sections. I have a commander that runs my criminal section, a commander that runs my veterans disability section, and a commander that runs my personal injury section. Now, beneath them, they have platoon leaders, and each platoon may have anywhere from 2 to 8 attorneys, paralegals, legal assistants. And so the leadership is the leadership team then supports those commanders. And those commanders, we treat them like in the military, combatant commanders. Their job is to get results, get the wins. The rest of the staff's job is to support them. So it's complicated, but if you come from a military background, it's not. And
I assume you have a military background?
I do.
Okay.
I started off as an infantry officer in the Army. I graduated from airborne school, Ranger school. I went to Bosnia in 1999, right when we started bombing Kosovo. And I thought, okay, this is going to blow up. And it stayed a peacekeeping mission. So I got out, went to law school, but the National Guard paid for my law school. I was a company commander. And then I got reactivated to go back into to go to Iraq as a company commander. It was a great experience. I came back to my law practice and they kept promoting me. In my last job, I was the battalion commander of the Officer and Warrant Officer Candidate School, where basically all I did was train leaders for 3 or 4 years. And it was an amazing experience. And I said, that is what I want to continue to do.
How big is your firm?
Right now, we have 130 team members.
Holy, that's a lot. Good for you.
Thank you. Well,
That's
it's
really
about
cool.
the size of an infantry company in the Army. So it's
Okay.
nothing new.
So what did you learn from being in the Army that you have been able to directly apply to running a law firm?
Teams matter. You hire the best people, develop their leadership skills, and let them lead their teams.
But how do you do that?
Well, first of all, you got to find great people. They've got to be great lawyers, and they've got to be coachable, trainable, and leaders. The thing about leaders is leaders want their team to succeed more than they want their own personal success. And it is very difficult. I put people in leadership positions and they have failed because even though they were great lawyers, they were not good leaders. And so finding those leaders, that leader-lawyer combination is difficult, very difficult.
How many leaders do you have at your firm?
Everybody's a leader.
Okay. And training?
And training, we do a lot of training. We want to do even more. Right now, we're planning our build of a training courthouse.
Okay.
But as you know, that's one piece of it. If you think about like all the business operations, we have training for our sales team. And while it's nice to have a courtroom where our veterans can practice their appellate arguments and we can run mock trials and focus groups, you got to train the entire team. And for those specialties like IT, finance, where we will never be big enough to train them, we've got to buy those positions. We've got to hire the best of the best and then let them tell us what training they need to advance. Because I think as the leader of the organization, my primary role is to offer everybody a bigger, better future where they can make more money, they can have higher job satisfaction, and they keep growing. I say, look, if you don't want to grow with us, you can't go with us.
Interesting. Are you going to expand either into other markets? Where are you guys based?
So we are based in Omaha. Right now, we practice veterans law nationwide. We have veteran clients in every state.
Okay.
We have a mass torts arm that has come from that. As you can imagine, Camp Lejeune, Phillips, the sleep machine, because we have a lot of veterans with sleep apnea. So we've had a lot of clients reach out to us, and we've seen that the mass tort space is somewhere where we can move in. But our criminal defense and PI practices are solely in Nebraska and Iowa right now.
Okay. And I assume you have growth plans?
We do.
Is it mass tort?
In the mass torts area. And we've got a wonderful team member who worked for a large mass torts firm. And now she runs we don't call it intake, we call it sales. Our sales
Thank
team.
you. Oh my God. Finally, everybody tells me you can't call it sales. Thank you. It's a fucking sales team.
Well, okay. Internally, we call it sales.
You should.
Externally, nobody wants to be sold to. So you can call it whatever
you want.
Whatever the guy was saying today. Yeah, client success, whatever.
Intake specialist. I don't care what you call it, but it is sales. And you have to treat it as a sales team. Literally have a CRM tool. What do you you have a CRM tool?
We do. I'm trying to think of what we're using right now. I mean, we went through Infusionsoft, which was Keep.
I've used Keep before, yeah.
But the systems we use now are Lead Docket and Filevine.
Thank God, yeah.
And then we've built. I think we might be using HubSpot right now. To be completely transparent, I used to be so deep in the weeds, but now that I hire great leaders, I just say, hey, here's your objective. Go get the results. I don't micromanage. They better be better at what they're doing than I am. That's why I hire them.
And how do you measure if they are how much, I guess, and I'm curious, even from a business owner perspective, how much time do you give someone to prove to you that they can get you the results? Is it a month? Is it 2? Is it 3? Is it 6? Is it a year?
It depends on the position, right? If it's a seasoned lawyer, within 90 days, we're going to know. Sometimes those brand new lawyers take a little bit longer, but that's why we have a robust law clerk program. We love to hire law clerks and train them. If we can get them as 1Ls and take them all the way through law school, by the time that they graduate and they're licensed, they have the ability then they know our culture, they know our operations, they know our systems, and it's a lot easier. That being said, we've hired a corporate trainer. And so we do a great job of onboarding, but to do that training, we thought, it's just 90 days. It's not. It takes longer. You invest in someone's training and development for their entire career.
Wow. So talk to me a little bit about the culture at your firm.
The culture is great. I always say that the brand is the base for the culture. So who are we, right? And so we are very clear on who we are, what we do, who we want to serve. We want to serve veterans. People say, well, gee, but isn't that's like the less than 1%. Yes, there are, I believe, only 1.4 million members of active duty military right now. But there are 19 million veterans in the United States and abroad. So that's really who we want to serve. And I think that's a great thing about having your own business. You get to decide who you want to be a hero to. And we love to work with veterans. They're the best clients. First of all, as far as I'm concerned, if there's anybody that I am willing to do anything for, it's for those people who raise their hand to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. For me, they made the sacrifice, and anytime I can give back, I want to do that.
And do you find that a lot of your veteran clients also turn into either, hopefully not criminal defense clients, or PI?
We get a lot of referrals, right? So inevitably what happens is they come to our firm, they have a great experience. And if something happens to a close friend or family member, my hope is that we're the first call. I heard this from a guy that wrote for my book here. What do they call them? Not the endorsements for the book. And his name is Bob Kerrey, former governor of Nebraska, former senator, I believe he's a presidential candidate at one time, Congressional Medal of Honor winner, Navy SEAL, Army Ranger Hall of Fame, dated Deborah Winger in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you know who that is. Okay.
I'm an immigrant, so I don't know anything prior to I don't know.
But he
2000s.
Fair enough. He told my dad something. He said, you live two lives. You live the life that you live, then you live the life that you live when you realize you only have one life to live.
Got it.
So once you realize that you only have one life,
I think I'm getting to that point.
Your perspective changes. I think what you're willing to tolerate changes. How you spend your time changes. How you spend your money changes. Your life goals change.
When did that happen for you?
When I got out of the military, went to law school and came out, I struggled a lot. Probably for 10 years, all I could think about is how much I wanted to be a great lawyer. And I took that oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States as a soldier. I had to take a similar oath as a lawyer. And I took that very seriously. And so I thought that meant, being the absolute best lawyer, not screwing anything up. Well, every lawyer screws things up. We're all human. But what I found was, the best way I can honor that oath is to start building a bigger future for lawyers that are much better than me. Don't get me wrong. I love to try cases. But when I hit about 42 years old.
How old are you?
49.
Okay.
I had hit a lot of my professional goals. And I was looking back saying, I have a few more goals to hit. Now what? And that's when I decided to grow the firm because I wanted other people to have bigger, better opportunities. When I thought about when I was happiest in life, it was being that 22-year-old second lieutenant showing up, and there were my subordinate leaders, the non-commissioned officers. They were at work before me, and they would push me so hard. And I never worried about screwing up or getting my ass chewed by my boss. I really worried about letting them down. So leadership has always been something that has given my life meaning. And I love to be around high performers. I just want to be part of it.
Well, who's that Navy SEAL that Extreme Ownership? He wrote the book Extreme Ownership. Do you know who I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah, Jocko. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't know why this conversation reminds me of him.
Yeah, no, I think he put a lot of the stuff he puts out is not just like special operations stuff. It's pretty standard military stuff. And I think, for a lot of civilians, they hear this stuff, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's definitely very interesting because if you don't have that training, just think about it. You don't have that training. It's all relative, right? Like for you, it's like you have this discipline and this leadership instilled in you and this teamwork instilled in you in what could potentially be a very life or death environment, right? Like most people don't have that. So from your point, isn't that crazy to think about from your point of view? That most people, not most, but a lot of people, I guess most people don't have that perspective.
I don't think so. And for me, my biggest fears were never that I was going to get killed. My biggest fears were I was going to do something stupid and make a bad decision and get somebody else killed. And throughout my entire military career, that was the biggest fear. It didn't matter whether it was in training or a deployment. It was wait a minute, I'm responsible for America's sons and daughters as a commander. And if I screw this up, not only am I going to have to answer to my chain of command, which whatever, but I'm going to have to answer to their families, to those moms and dads to say, I failed your son and daughter.
That's tough.
Yeah, it's really tough, but it builds amazing people. So I got a great story. I have a friend named Ryan Hendrickson. He wrote a book called Tip of the Spear. He went to Afghanistan as a new Green Beret, got his leg blown almost completely off, the bone completely severed. It's hanging on by ligaments and tendons. He gets back to the United States and the doctor tells him, well, I got some good news. This is a great time to have a limb that is practically blown off because we're doing a lot of experimental surgery. And if we do the surgery, you're going to have a 10% chance of having that limb reattached. 27 surgeries later, his leg is fine. He goes back to Afghanistan, goes back into combat, and earns the Silver Star for heroism in battle. And so he's been a friend. And I think you heard my presentation today, the 50-mile march I did last year. And so I was trying to convince him to do it with me. Now, he still has to wear a little brace when he goes far, but he's been to Ukraine 7 times in the past year to demine.
That's crazy.
Yeah, he has a nonprofit called Tip of the Spear. And so he's like, I finished my military career and I didn't know how else I could give back. So he wanted to give back. So anyways, we're talking about this 50-mile march, and I was in a pretty bad bike accident a couple months ago, broke clavicle, 6 ribs, punctured a lung. And Ryan was traveling. He didn't know when he was going to be back from Ukraine. He had some speaking engagements. And so we both decided we're not doing this 50-mile march. We're out. And then 2 weeks prior to the march, he texts me, I'll do it if you do it. So what do you say to the guy who had his leg blown off in combat and reattached and wants to walk 50 miles with you?
Yeah, you haven't, yeah.
No choice. And then the funny thing is, another guy, a Green Beret, that doesn't know Ryan. His name's Freddie Kim. He runs Mil-Spec Talent. He's also Army Ranger, Special Forces officer, great dude. He calls and says, John, I thought we were going to get together sometime this month. Let's try to make it happen in the next few weeks. Could we do that? And I said, Freddie, yeah, why don't you come this weekend? We'll walk 50 miles. And he's like, okay. And so we didn't even know, they didn't even know what they're getting themselves into. But once we started doing it, this is, that they have that warrior ethos. They're not going to quit. So even though we weren't in shape for it, we weren't trained, none of us were going to get punked by the other person. And that's just that special relationship. And during 50 miles, when you're really sucking up the pain and you're seeing a guy with a leg brace whose leg was reattached, it's pretty hard to quit.
I didn't even know they could do that.
I didn't either until I read his book, until I met him. And what a great human.
That's crazy. Imagine what we're going to be able to do years from now.
Yeah, the medical advancements are amazing. That being said, this guy also, there's got to be a will there. There's got to be that steel will.
Do you miss being in the military?
Absolutely.
Why didn't you stay?
The funny thing about the military is you miss the people. I think you miss some of the excitement, but there's a lot of bureaucracy. And I'm an entrepreneur, and entrepreneurs and bureaucracies don't always work out very well.
I'm aware.
But sometimes I have regrets. Sometimes I wish I would have stayed in. At the end of the day, I went to my battalion command school in 2014, and I met all my friends that stayed on active duty, and most of them had deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan 6 or 7 times. So we were young lieutenants together in the late 90s, and then I run into them in 2014, and they stayed in. I went in the reserve component, became a lawyer, and I'm hearing about all their deployments, and I'm thinking, it's pretty tough to have a family and to pursue other things. And I also my father was aging. He wanted me to take over the law firm. So my father, while he wanted me to go in the military, didn't want me to stay in. And the timing was just right for me to get out and go to law school and take over the firm.
So we touched on intake for a minute. Who trains your intake team?
So I was very fortunate to, on the way to MTMP, I'm sitting next to this woman on the plane, and I've got my North Face backpack with a Berry Law logo. She's like, oh, wait, you're John Berry. I've seen your billboards. I said, yeah. So I start meeting her. She works for some firm in New York. She's working remote, and we start talking, and she works for a mass torts firm, and she works primarily doing their sales. And she lit intake. And
I agree with you, but just to the listener.
She lived in Lincoln, Nebraska, which is where our headquarters, I live in Omaha, but our headquarters is in Lincoln. And I said, and so we just started talking, and I said, I was like, well, this is really fascinating. After leaving that conference, I got a hold of somebody. I think it was from somebody in CRISP. They did a phenomenal job. There was this young lady there, and I said, hey, her name was Chloe. And I'm like, hey, I'm looking for this woman. Her name's Megan. I don't know who she works for. I met her on the plane. Can you find her? And they're like, that Monday, I got an email saying, I think this is her LinkedIn profile. And then so I reached out to her and I explained what we do. And she said, yeah, I'd love to join your team as the sales attorney and mass torts attorney. So she runs the sales team. And
so back up. You have an attorney? No. You have an attorney running your intake team.
Yes, absolutely.
And why is that? Why do you think that it should be an attorney?
Because the decisions that you have to make, I believe, require a license. Now, do you have to be licensed to sell a case? No. but the person overseeing them, I feel a lot more comfortable knowing that I have a licensed attorney who is overseeing that. It just gives me a lot more confidence. And also she's an experienced attorney. So she knows not only is she great at sales because she understands the attorney, like what the attorneys need to do, but she also understands the sales side. And what happened to us in the past was that we would get someone who really understood the intake or sales side, but they did not understand the attorney time side. And there was so much friction. But now she comes into the organization with immediate credibility, and she's able to, I think, talk to the attorneys, but also run the sales team efficiently. And so she's developed leaders beneath her on the sales team. And she also came to us at the time, around the time of Camp Lejeune. And by that time, we had represented thousands of veterans for VA disability claims related to Camp Lejeune. She understood the mass torts part of it. We really didn't. And so it was just a perfect match.
And now, if the intake person or salesperson can't sign up the case, does it escalate to her? Does she get involved to try to sign the case?
So, to be fair, all of our three verticals have different processes, which is a little bit complicated, but it's different for veterans law.
But let's say PI. PI.
Yeah. I mean, so, we have a certain criteria. And then what we do is, we're not there yet. To be transparent, we're not there yet. There's still some push and pull from the attorneys, but basically they're doing a phenomenal job gathering the information. And they're saying this qualifies. And then we have a few senior attorneys who will say, send the fee agreement or don't. The difficult thing in PI is, there's a couple ways you can go broke, right? And one way is that you can sign up a bunch of garbage cases, right? And then the other way is you can miss out on a bunch of good cases. I think you just heard Dan Morgan today talk about that yes, you're going to miss some. And so we want that double layer of protection. So we can, in theory, she can sign them up and then she can, but we still want an attorney to review it before we sign the contract, before we commit to it. And we'll investigate it first. And there's a delicate balance between making sure that we serve those potential clients, making sure that, that we're a good fit for them, and that we are going to do our due diligence to investigate their case. But I found that where lawyers screw this up is they sign up a bunch of cases. The lawyers don't know anything about the cases. By the time the lawyers actually look at the cases, it's weeks or months down the road. And they look at they're like, there's nothing here. We can't help. And then they might be up against a statute of limitations. There might be other problems. So
bad review.
Yeah, you get a negative review. And so we found that clients actually appreciate when we say, look, if you're willing to work with us, we will review your case and we'll tell you whether we think we can pursue this case or not. So we don't fall into that trap of we have a bunch of cases signed up and nobody's looking at them. Like, we want an attorney to look at that case right away and be in contact with that client within 24 hours of the time they call in.
Now, do you have a percentage of wanted cases that you're shooting to sign up?
I think the industry standard is 95%.
Mm-hmm.
And so
95, yeah.
Yeah, so
in my opinion. I don't know.
So of course we shoot for 97.
Okay. And do you hit 97?
Some weeks.
And some weeks you don't.
Some weeks we don't.
And then do you guys go back and say, do you listen to calls? Like, how does this, what's her name? The woman?
Megan.
How does Megan ensure, accuracy and that, everyone's empathetic and nothing's kind of falling through the cracks?
She does a lot of training. And only in our PI section do we actually record the calls. And of course, we let the prospective clients know.
Of course.
In criminal cases, you don't want to do that because someone's calling in and they're sharing. We don't like to record, and we haven't done that on our veterans disability side, but we do it on PI. And I can tell you that was a pretty big cultural shift for our firm because being a criminal defense firm, we don't want anything recorded, right? It's like people are coming to us, bearing their souls. We don't, it's like we don't want it. We don't want to do that. But also, our criminal defense team does not sign people up on the first call. It is, it's different. As I said today, great brands don't chase clients. The clients chase the brand. And we found for our criminal defense team, for people that everything is on the line, their future, their freedom, for a lot of them, they understand our process and we vet them, and we are much more selective in the criminal cases. But the other thing is the clients have to pay money up front.
Right. Oh, super different business.
Super different. It's a different business model. And, but yeah, I mean, I think you have to look at what works best for your team. But it was a huge cultural shift from having intake, for having the lawyers answer the calls,
right,
to saying, no, we're gonna screen the calls. We're gonna protect your time, lawyers, because when I have lawyers come to my team, I want them to come to my team thinking that, or believing that we will deliver on the best technology, that we are going to remove all the garbage from your plate so that you can be the best possible lawyer you can be. Like athletes, right? Like, you go back to the myth was back in the 70s, Bruce Jenner would rinse the excess fat off of his cottage cheese for that edge, for that little advantage. And so that's kind of the way we see it. It's like, what little edge can we give these attorneys? How do we protect their time so that all they're doing is handling cases, training, and business development? We try to remove everything else from their plate. So a lot of that does mean removing some of that initial information gathering during that initial sales call.
Got it. Now I'm curious, when you advertise, when you do billboards, are you being specific as to we're a criminal defense firm or a PI firm? I assume you're not doing or is it just very straightforward? You don't do billboards for veterans, or do you?
We've done some. I found that they work best for PI.
Of course.
And then, we do some criminal defense.
Okay.
To give you an example, my wife's name is Mallory Hughes. And so we got married. She did not take my name because the tagline was falsely accused, call Mallory Hughes. So we have 3 billboards.
I'm friends with her on Facebook.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So we have 3 billboards that go from when you take the exit. There's one that you see right away. The next one is the one right before you get to the jail. And the next one's the one right before the courthouse. Right. Okay. So that's where we have the criminal billboards. They're strategically placed. They've got her on there, and it's a different brand than me. And that's okay because she's a brand within a brand.
Right. And have you guys merged your firms and your operations, or no?
So, I hired her. We have not merged with anybody, and we have not acquired firms. I've seen people do that, but
yeah, it's like a thing now.
Well, it's a thing, and I think there's some opportunity there. My former COO worked for Pillsbury, an AmLaw 50 firm, and they had acquired firms, so he knew how to do it. But as we dug into some of the firms that we looked at, it was like, is the juice worth the squeeze, or are you better off just poaching their best lawyers, right?
Interesting. That is interesting. Because I was just talking to, who was it? I don't know I can't remember now if it was Alex Shannara or Larry Nussbaum, who said that when they buy firms, they're just looking at the active cases.
Well, and Alex has a philosophy, right, that the value of a firm is the value of your inventory. And so I think
that was it.
So
you're literally quoting what I don't know which one said it. They're both, they're partners.
They work together. Sure, they're partners. Yeah. But no, and I've learned so much from Alex. He's been very generous with his time with me. And he's the reason I'm in billboards.
Really?
Yeah. So now we had a great conversation about that. But the thing is, Alex is right from the perspective of how do other businesses value your business? They're going to look at your case inventory and say, what's the value of the case inventory? And so I think Alex is dead on. And, building a brand is a little bit different because I believe brands have value. Good brands do.
But your brand is tied to you. Or is it not anymore?
Not as much.
Is your face on the billboard?
So you have to understand that because we have the 3 verticals, that yes, probably the overarching face of the company is me. But then I also take my commanders, those section leaders, and I make them a brand within a brand. I put them on billboards. Now, I'd hate to have 2 people on a billboard, or 3 people, or 4, except for me and my dad. But so I will give them their own space within Very Law, which I know is contrary to what people believe. But I want my team to have ownership mentality. I want them to protect a brand.
But under the brand?
Yes.
So it'll say Very Law and their face.
In some of the billboards, yes.
Okay.
Don't worry, there are plenty with my name.
Okay.
So in my face. Yeah.
Okay. No, I think I've seen that. I think Sweet James does that sometimes.
Yeah, in the end,
But I think he's always in them. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I want them to take an ownership in the brand and protect the brand as if it's their own. And so to do that, I have to give them a reason to want to protect the brand.
A monetary reason.
No, I think I promote them. I make them a brand within a brand. Do I give them monetary reasons? Absolutely. But I go beyond just the money. I'm like, you know what? I want you to have what you want. I don't want anybody to come to my organization and be unhappy and be like, oh, I'm here and I'm not happy. I'm not being branded. I'm not getting opportunities, because they're going to leave. Right. And if they're really good, you want to keep them, and you have to do what's necessary to keep them. And what I found is, while lawyers, I think, are misled about equity, from their law school days, I want to be an equity partner. But a lot of the lawyers I talk to, they don't want the risk. They want the upside, but not the risk.
I think it's really tough being a business owner, and I don't think it's for everyone. And I think a lot of lawyers are really good at being lawyers, but They're not very good at running a business. Because to do those two things well is really hard. To do one of those two things well is really hard. Now, add the complexity of these two very hard things and now go be really good at both. I don't think it's possible without a really amazing team or a really great partnership or something like that.
Absolutely. I mean, you have to treat them like partners. And look, at the end of the day, right, I'm not going to die with all the equity. That's not my plan, right? I want to have partners. I want to have them soon. But the people who get it understand how much of an investment it is, right? And how much risk I carry. And so for a lot of them, they're like, well, I mean, at the end, if everything ends tomorrow, everybody else from my firm can walk away, not lose anything, right? If it all, and as you know, as a business owner, if it all ends tomorrow, your employees can walk away with everything they have. You may lose everything, but that's what makes it exciting.
I am with you. All righty. Well, thank you so much for joining me like super last minute. I wasn't prepared for this, but
neither was I.
You're a natural, so you
Thanks
made
so
it
much
easy.
for having me.
Thank you so much to John for everything he shared with us today. If you found the story valuable, please share it with someone you want to see succeed. Subscribe so you never miss an episode, and leave a 5-star review. It goes a long way to help others discover the show.